Hey everyone, welcome to a reading of Alternis' journal in Bravely Default. We got this for defeating Alternis in Chapter 4. Ducal Reckoning, 9-1-16. The Council of Six ship Dark Knight weighed anchor today, our destination Anchiym. This marks the first entry in my fourth journal kept since my tenure as an officer began. My current mission, to collect the airship newly developed in Anchym's secret shipyard, and to transport the Skystone given to me by the Grand Marshal and see it installed, rendering the new vessel skyworthy. I've just set a southeastward course and noticed my coffee's gone cold. I had it cleared away. The view beneath me is a sea of clouds, its eastern edge taking on a ruddy tinge as my fresh cup is brought. This aroma is one of my day's few luxuries. I've come to the Prophet's Merchantry's secret shipyard in Anchiym. Work installing the Skystone within the newly built ship I'm to collect is at a standstill. 3 days of waiting. The heat is stifling, and the coffee drowned in sugar. I hate this place. It's to be called the echelon. I'm surprised the first word from Medea's lips upon seeing the blueprints has become its official designation. I'd raced for another night of catnapping in this sweltering dock, but just received word the Skystone is set and sealed. The ship's maiden flight is to the Florrum Sea, where the ship I rode here is berthed. While it lacks the horsepower of a heavy cruiser like the Dark Knight, the ship is nimble and its design pleasing. I find myself quite taken with it. Following her test flight to the Florrum Sea, the echelon has begun seafaring tests. I am confident the ship's power, speed, maneuverability, and defenses all meet the requirements laid forth by the Sky Knights. The airship originally assigned to the Sky Knights suffered damage during the initial incursion into Caldislaw and crashed. The mission to tow the newly completed echelon to Caldislaw's Lantano villa will commence in 1 month's time. It will be Adea's first sortie. It falls on me to spend the next 10 days overseeing thorough testing of the craft's ability to withstand the Sky Knights' rough handling. The steel airlock door creaked shut behind me. Footsteps investigating the noise drew close for a moment, but soon faded. I lowered myself into bed with a sigh. My right hand unconsciously drifted to the back of my head. There, beneath my pillow, it fell upon a picture frame. Within it, a disheveled room full of scrap iron, oil stains, and a single beautiful flower. My beloved Edea. I pined for the chance to see a smile unfurl across your face set in equal parts courageous fire and innocence. I longed to hear your voice, sweet like a spring breeze. Let it speak my name, and I shall die a happy man. I could hear the nervous shuffling outside my door as someone afraid to disturb me. Not afraid enough, it seems. I returned the photo to its hiding place and answered without bothering to conceal my irritation. I'm awake. What is it? I skimmed the manual I'd been given, then tossed it on the bed. I returned to Edea's smile, perfectly preserved within the picture frame. The echelon. My lips formed the word time and again as I watched the new ship in tow from my cabin porthole. I make for Caldislaw aboard the airship Dark Knight. I entrusted a subordinate with the task of towing the echelon to Duchy waters, and now sailed to give word to the Sky Knights. It was late afternoon by the time we moored at the Lantano Villa's air dock. Ah, is this our new boat? It's so black and punchy! As I descended to the villa roof, I was met with the loudest misunderstanding I've ever encountered. What? Why send our new ship back to the Duchy? We're here, man! Bring it to us! Bring it! Or just give us this one! Either or. Constant shouting aside, Barislaw's point is utterly reasonable. To him, at least, one assumes. But he's not getting my ship. Hey, kid, you made it! When I reached the villa's study, I was greeted with a rough slap on the back from Henkel, captain of the Sky Knights. He continues to treat me like a boy, despite my superior rank. Strangely, I don't really mind. Arguing with him is a waste of time, regardless. 2 hours later, I sat down to a table laid heavy with a feast. What began as a welcome celebration for me ended in a horror show of Barris's inhumane appetite and Henkel and Holly's tag team drinking. The deal will serve an ominous unit. I was sobering up on the balcony when Henkel came to deliver that news, leaving me wholly flustered. I could see his grin from the corner of my eye as he raised his glass in a mock toast. Knight Argent Henkel. Tales of his feats go back before the Duchy's founding. He holds the Grand Marshal's trust, to the point of once serving as captain of his personal guard. For some reason, this hero has taken an interest in me from a young age. I owe him more than I can hope to repay. Henkel's proposal would have been confusing enough, even without the exquisite hangover clouding my brain. I asked if he was mad to suggest infiltrating the Caldislaw castle town. His reply came with a laugh. You didn't seem to think so when you volunteered for the job. I should have smelled a trap when he brought that flagon out to the balcony. Going undercover all alone for little Edea's sake? Oh, what a man! I might swoon! Leave it to Holly to smell blood in the water and join in the teasing. Just leave me alone. Yes, yes! Charge into enemy territory and single-handedly smash everything! Strategy! Where do I even begin with Barris? Also, his voice is splitting my head in two. And why is he performing maintenance on my ship? It may be black, but my armor is hardly subtle, so off comes the helmet for this mission. I am leaving my sword as well. Wait, am I seriously going through with this? I was dropped a ways from the city, told to await a smoke signal, and with that, my ship left for the villa once more. I hurried for the capital as the sun dipped below the Norende Plateau. My steps are unnervingly light without my armor, and these clothes hang oddly on me. Most of all, I feel naked, unarmed. I was greeted at the city's edge by the sound of a whistle marking the arrival of a merchant ship. Between the merchants and wholesalers, the dock workers unloading crates, the tired crewmen, and the eager children excited by the exotic wares, the port was buzzing with people. As I pushed my way upstream through the crowd and along the avenue toward the palace, I spotted a splendid building, its roof a rich navy. This must be the inn the old fisherman described. Inside, I found a man with a gentle mien sitting behind a well-polished counter. I asked after any vacancies, but he replied with a chagrined, "Sorry, we're all full up tonight." It feels quiet for a full inn, but I don't suppose I can blame him. A walk-in customer at this hour, clearly not a local, no one to vouch for me. Any respectable innkeep would offer some version of the same excuse. When I inquired after a place to eat, he said down by the port there should be a cheap pub catering to sailors that's open until morning. Lovely. Back down I go. At the hill's bottom, I ate my fill at a food cart aimed at drunken sailors. Now it's back up to the inn. I refused to spend the night kept awake by carousing seamen. I let myself into the empty house next door to the inn. I'll just have to sleep lightly. I was awakened by the sound of sword practice, shouts of exertion, and the pleasant smell of toast. One of the king's guard, perhaps? Looks about my age and reasonably skilled. I lay in my makeshift bed, lazily counting his swings. "Hurry up, Owen. You'll be late." Upon hearing the innkeep's words, the youth replied and made his way down from the misty hilltop and into the inn. The scent of breakfast coming from next door has me drooling. One bite of my rock-hard bread brought me back to reality. The bacon burnt coal black and the murky, bitter coffee made me wish it hadn't. I suppose I can expect no more from a shabby stand in the port. After choking down my fill, I climbed the hill toward the palace. Supplied by a series of lush waterways, Caldislaw was once a formidable city fortress. These days, its hooked central avenue is lined with the magic shop, general store, armory, and other businesses. A large gate stands as a vestige of that era, though now it serves mostly as a site for the town bulletin board. This year's boar hunt is set to begin once the final slot is filled. Weapons provided by the hunting committee. A boar hunt? With the duchy attacking? I was speechless. As I made to leave, I felt someone grasp my shoulder. "This fellow says he'll join the hunt! We ride today!" I turned, shock and irritation laid bare, only to find Owen, the young man I had seen practicing in the fog that morning. My initial protests were drowned in a rising cheer, and as the smith handed me a broadsword and buckler, I dumbly accepted. Potions from the town chemist followed. Between their expectant smiles and Owen's grin, I found myself unable to say no. On the road, I was told a litany of facts I cared nothing about. The search for food to fatten up before hibernating apparently drives the giant boars to local farms, where they raid crops and injure workers. As a result, the city gathers volunteers each year to hunt them. As captain of the guard, I discover, responsibility for overseeing the hunt falls upon Owen. The armorer was slated to participate, but a leg injury has him on crutches. Owen says he was searching for a replacement when he found a promising candidate during his morning practice. Lucky him. We walked a full, tiring day stalking our prey. First, the trader gave out, then chatter dried up between the two young castle guards. Sunset found us upriver from the city, at the entrance to the Norende Canyon. Just as we decided to make camp, a rustling came from the thickets behind us. The boar that leapt out was indeed a giant, a vicious, one-tusked monster that survived the last year's hunt. In a flash, it gored one of the guards, then the other, leaving only Owen, me, and the trader. The boar stamped the ground, preparing to charge the old man now paralyzed with fear. I expect we'd all given up hope for the kindly old merchant when the beast suddenly changed course. With only seconds to react, Owen landed a mighty blow, felling the monster in a single strike. I set about treating the young guard's injuries. The trader, clearly still worked up, narrated Owen's victory to the two boys. With every reverent word, I felt as though I was being derided as useless. The others took to sleep, while I set watch to keep the fire going. Owen rose and came to sit beside me. "Thanks for before." I kept silent, but he pressed on. The boar only changed targets because you circled behind me and channeled your energy at it. It's thanks to you we're not carting home a corpse." He sat, waiting, apparently bent on receiving a response. His grin is infectious. "I took the surest course of action," I replied as I held aloft my broadsword. I had my doubts this blade was up to the task. The weapon's edge was chipped in places, its length bent. With a gentle shake, the pommel gave an unsettling rattle. Owen burst into laughter at the noise. Apparently, my response passed muster. He continued, his grin never flagging. "Starting tomorrow, you'll stay at my place. I'll give word to my father to open a room for you. I was dragged on this hunt, but if it earns me a real breakfast, it's a bargain I'd take gladly." The innkeep's voice and the smell of coffee being laid on the table roused me from my thoughts. "You're from Anchiym, eh? You'll be wanting extra sugar then." Politely declining, I took a sip. Quality beans roasted to perfection. Exquisite. After the hunt, we'd carried the wounded back to town. We tied the boy to a high tree branch. Owen said the townspeople would come for it later. After seeing to the boy's treatment, Owen invited me to his home, the inn. Savior was the title he used when introducing me to his father. I was mortified. I was on a journey of personal discovery, originally come from Anchiym. They bought my arbitrary lies without hesitation. They welcomed me. That evening, we dined early, and well. The boy had been carted back to town, and our share of the meat filled the table. Once Owen returned from the palace, we sat down to feast. The innkeep is a brilliant cook, and we ate, drank, and reveled into the night. "Come by the palace tomorrow. I want you to meet the king." He repeated himself time and again, words slurred from the wine, despite my pretending to be asleep. I stood before the king of Caldislaw. Owen seemed determined to drag me into the king's service. It's a mercy I didn't know he was speaking to one of Eternia's council of 6. I expect the embarrassment would be crippling. The Caldislaw king lacks any presence, any fire. Outside an inn, he's utterly common. If I were to kill this man where he stands, would it aid Eternia? Remembering that I am unarmed and that Owen isn't, nips any plotting in the bud. After regaling the king with tales of my valor, he pushes for my appointment to the king's guard. I parry with a roundabout excuse. Perhaps the king mistook my hesitation for modesty, but he did not press the point. The audience ended, and Owen's scheme with it. I left the palace, surreptitiously noting the number of guards, their equipment, and any other indication of Caldislaw's might. To be blunt, Owen is the only real obstacle here. Given Henkel's strength, I expect he could take the kingdom by brute force, if necessary. I've been in Caldislaw a week, with no sign of the smoke signal. I join Owen in his training some mornings, walk the city streets, chat with the elderly, drink at the cellars at the docks, arm wrestling the drunks. Mostly I just passed the time. Today was another peaceful afternoon, the same as any other. Owen was at the palace since morning. I was enjoying a cup of the innkeep's coffee. It happened in an instant. I felt as if someone was set to plunge a knife into my back. I turned and saw a window. Through it, the northern sky was on fire in a flash of pure white. Moments later, the inn shook. An earthquake? Shockwave? All of Caldislaw trembled. The innkeep moaned about a set of heirloom teacups breaking. I had my doubts that teacups would be the worst of the damage. Outside, I spied some injured people, but the city and palace stood unharmed. Another flash lit the sky to the northwest. Close. The Norende Plateau, perhaps. It wasn't until the following morning that Owen came home. By the time he finished muttering about his morning training, he was snoring. A knock at his door put an end to the brief rest that afternoon. "The river's jammed with rubble." After receiving the scout's report, Owen wolfed down the late breakfast his father had readied, then turned to me. "Sounds like I may need a hand later." I nodded, eyes fixed on the northwestern sky. The bridge across the Caldislaw River has lain in ruins since the Duchy felled it. Now, a flotilla of further rubble and countless corpses approach from upstream. Upstream means the Norende Canyon, and the village of Norende at its source. I suppose that's our epicenter. Owen and I split up and joined the others searching for victims. Owen's team searched the river's mouth, while I gathered men from town to search further upstream. I have a longsword at my side, a new one this time, in good condition. Seems the smithy's been busy. The armorer, the old trader, and a dockhand joined me on the shadowy path through the canyon. A few paces in, the armorer spotted something floating by. A young man, floating face up and snagged on the rocks. We ran to his side. "He's breathing! The boy's alive!" While the others rejoiced, I was more concerned with the ominous shadows surrounding us. Goblins? What are monsters doing here? There ought not be monsters so close to human settlement. Not in these numbers. The townspeople were clearly overwhelmed. No doubt this was their first such encounter. I hesitated, unsure for a moment. But no, I had to take action. When I give the signal, hoist the boy out and sprint for the canyon's mouth. Is that clear? A nod returned from each of them. Sudden movement would distract the creatures for a moment. I hoped that was all I'd need. Now go! Thankfully, both merchants escaped, as well as the dockhand with the unconscious boy across his shoulders. Left alone, I faced a quickly closing circle of enemies. So be it, I thought. Come closer then. A bit more. A deep growl emerged from my chest. Black Bane! When I emerged from the canyon on shaky legs, I was greeted by 3 anxious faces. It was this fellow that saved me, I said, holding aloft the badly worn longsword. A huge, proud grin threatened to split the armorer's cheeks. We hurried the boy back to town. I carried him to the inn. I need spirits and all the bandages you've got. And Gramps, all the potions you've got too. I laid him in a bed by the window and stripped him down, and had a look at his wounds. Thankfully, they were light, though he still showed no signs of stirring. Owen's group returned soon after, a few of his men wounded. They had run into monsters as well, leaving men to guard the gates. He made for the palace to report and formulate a plan. When he came by to deliver the medicine, the old trader remarked that the boy's clothing bore an Arende pattern. 3 days the boy stayed at the inn, and still no sign of waking. The innkeep says he's run a fever the entire time. This afternoon is a warm one. Now I'm watching the innkeep nod off at the counter. The aftershocks have stopped, and peace is slowly returning to the city, but a shadow lingers over the earth, the sky, and the townspeople's hearts. Glancing through the window, I saw people motioning towards the port. Another merchant ship, I thought, but no. Their shouts were anxious, not excited. I stepped outside, following the gaze of the others in the street. It was a merchant vessel I saw drifting into port. But something was wrong. The ship was listing hard, its aft mast broken. I sprinted down the hill. As I ran, I noticed a dark, heavy color spreading through the water from the mouth of the bay inward. I caught snippets as I passed. The sea's begun to rot. Ships can't leave the bay. No fish in the last few days. A few days. Then the change began when the quake hit. The ship listed further, rescue boats surrounding it. Most of the cargo had already been cast overboard. When the boats reached the pier, a parade of passengers and crew emerged, each looking more exhausted than the next. By some miracle, there were no lives lost, though most of the freight followed the ship to the bottom of the bay. The merchants mourned their lost profits and the crew their vessel. The seamen had lost their sea, and the passengers were now stranded. Despair ran rampant. Except for one young girl. She was full of questions, about the quake 4 days prior, about the flash that lit the sky, about Nerende. Did you know someone in the village? Family, perhaps. Her jaw set at my query. Was it anger? Fear? She wordlessly shook her head from side to side. No? I just figured, hearing you ask about the quake so soon after weathering the sea. I thought maybe you were a friend of that boy's. Boy? What boy? Came her reply. Suspicion played on her face, but as the next boat reached the pier, we were shooed out of the harbor. Another visitor from Anchiym, eh? You must be tired. Why don't you stay with us till you're settled? I would call it a different sort of greeting. I cast a sour smile his way, and he responded with a grin. We have a sick one in the back. I hope you won't mind. The girl replied with a nod. Her name, I learned, was Anyas. She seems guarded about her past. Not that I can talk. Conversation continues to be awkward. She shows interest in what was happening in this country when the quake hit. For my part, I asked her about the sea. Her ship had left before the earthquake struck. She says about halfway between Anchiym and Caldislaw, their pace began to slow. The seawater clouded, and dead fish began to float to the surface. First, small ones, then larger. As they neared port, the wind died. It was pure luck the ships drifted in before going calm. Other vessels they passed in the bay, she reported, were less fortunate. She listened as I recounted what happened in the canyon, the color draining from her face. I told her the village was likely the quake's epicenter, and that monsters had flooded the area in its wake. We talked till late into the night. As the morning mist cleared, I saw traces of a smoke signal hanging in the southwestern sky. I ate breakfast, the same as any other day, and saw Owen off to work. I owe him a greater debt than he knows, and a few apologies. After one last cup of the innkeep's coffee, I departed. Out for another one of your walks? Asked the old trader as I passed. Something like that, was my reply. I handed him what money I had, and asked him to bring whatever medicine it bought to the boy later. With the city behind me, I broke into a run for the lake to the southwest. Along the way, I encountered 3 packs of monsters. The longsword I had been given broke midway through the third. I arrived to find the dark night moored and waiting. Aboard the ship, I donned my jet-black armor and helm for the first time in 2 weeks. With my trusty blade hung at my side, I made for the bridge. There, my crew informed me of our return orders. My new mission is to survey the changes occurring throughout the world, and to report them to the Council. The report on Caldislaw had already been sent from the Lantano Villa. Their conclusion, that the great chasm that appeared beneath Nerende was both cause and effect of the quake. No threatened region save Captain Owen's blade. After firing off a wire to Henkel, I gave the order to return to Eternia. As we neared the crags, I received an urgent wire from Anchiym. Wind vessel missing. A description of the ship she was thought to have taken followed, as well as its destination. Surely not, I thought, but the facts aligned. Agnes? The Vestal of Wind? I sent another wire to Henkel, and a copy home to the Council. In reply, I received word that Dia had been charged with the Vestal's apprehension. Their operation begins tomorrow. I had hoped to send her off on her first mission. A shame. An urgent wire from Caldislaw came during the night. Sky Knights routed. Airship stolen by Vestal and accomplices. Dia believed among their ranks. The Knights of the Eternian Sky, 4th Division of the Eternian Forces, is lost. More than anything, it was Henkel's defeat that shook the ranks. Shook me as much as anyone. As I summarized what information I had, local news reports arrived to provide more detail. One bore the headline, Vestal of Wind breezes into Caldislaw. The Vestal, joined by Tiz Orier, survivor of Nerende, promised the king they would rout the duchy's Sky Knight days later. One bore the headline, Vestal of Wind breezes into Caldislaw. The Vestal, joined by Tiz Orier, survivor of Nerende, promised the king they would rout the duchy's Sky Knights. Days later, she thwarted the Eternian siege and beat their men at the lake to the southwest. Tiz. That boy! In recognition of her sparing the land from the Sky Knights' cannons, Caldislaw's king offered her his full support, swearing to send his full force north to strike the duchy's base pending the bridge's repair. That battle saw Barris and Holly facing the Vestal. They were good soldiers. The Wind Vessel and Tiz Orier set out for the ruins of Central Keep to defeat the mage responsible for torching Caldislaw's castle town. Seeing an opportunity in the vessel's absence, the duchy struck the palace by airship, slaying the captain of the guard and abducting the king. Some days after the keep's fall, the Vestal and her 3 accomplices struck Lantano Villa and absconded with the echelon. Eyewitness reports confirmed that Henkel lured them aboard the ship, and that they engaged in combat. The knight's whereabouts are presently unknown. A guardsman on the day of the attack claims he learned of Black Mage Ominous Crow's death at the hands of the bloodthirsty Vestal through a report from Adia Lee. He opened the gates for her immediately after. Was Adia taken hostage by the Vestal and her henchmen? The Council of 6 was called, and I delivered the collected findings of my investigation in Caldislaw. Orders for the Vestal's arrest were sent to Anchym's Connor and Profiteer Merchantry. Half a month after giving the order, no word of the Vestal's capture has returned, nor any certain news of her at all, in fact. One report claims she returned to Anchiym on the 5th, while another suggests that she fled its borders again on the 11th. I've gathered the major reports documenting the changes befalling the world since the chasm's emergence. Multiple sources confirm that save a few stretches of sea, the oceans all show signs of rot, causing the mass death of marine life and precluding ships from sailing. Next, reports confirm that the westerlies, trade winds, polar easterlies, and seasonal winds have died. No sea breezes, no currents down mountains or valleys. No word as to the cause. In Civil War-torn Eisenberg, volcanic activity has spiked, resulting in massive casualties. Even within the duchy, reports claim that the crags are rising. The effect this bears on air currents is under study, but no conclusions have yet emerged. Victor has theorized that the crystals of fire, water, wind, and earth have all entered a state of quasi-dormancy in the wake of the chasm's appearance. After delivering my report to the Council, the Grand Marshal gave me direct orders to investigate Anchiym. At last, an excuse to look into what's befallen Adia. I was packed within the hour, and now right from the Dark Knight's bridge. The Florrum Inner Sea remains unsullied, and serves now as a holding place for ships from neighboring waters as well. I walked the port asking after the Vestal's whereabouts, or those of the ships she stole, at least, but was unable to uncover anything useful. My continued search brings me to Anchiym proper. The ship's almanac has this to say of it. A clockwork metropolis, nestled in Harina's sandy bosom. Here, time above all is sacred. A massive timepiece crowns the kingdom, fueled as all of Anchiym is by the ceaseless winds originating from the Temple of Wind to the south. I crossed the desert and arrived at the city's edge. It seems those ceaseless winds have ceased in the chasm's wake. Deprived of a precious power source, Anchym's people now suffer under forced manual labor. Those I met were too tired and apathetic to answer my questions. Perhaps motivated by the coin I flashed, one man I asked stammered this through an awkward blush. Try the Juliana Woods. I reached out to hand the money, but he turned and ran without taking it. Very odd. I returned to my almanac. Juliana Woods, the hidden heart of an ancient wood northeast of Anchiym. This makes 10 days I've run around Anchiym, from the palace to the Temple of Wind, the Harina ruins, and back to Anchiym. Still no signs of the Vestal. No sign of Edea. Even in the Miasma Woods, sole land route connecting Anchiym with Florrum, home of the water crystal, I found nothing of use. After camping in the desert, I have sand in every crack of my armor, making it screech with every movement. Ah, just now, a report from the lookout! A flash in the southern sky. Multiple sources confirm it. By the time I reached the inner sea, details had arrived from the man I left in Anchiym. Apparently, the light rose from the direction of the Temple of Wind. I have a bad feeling. The air in front of Anchym's royal palace was taut. The Vestal heaped abuse upon the king, and presented something to the agitated masses assembled there. It was a chain bearing an evil sigil. The glassy-eyed mob reached fever pitch. The Vestal pointed south, and the delirious mob turned their eyes to the sky, crying out her name. I moved to approach her, but the zealous crowd was packed tight. Fearing for his life, the king fled to the palace, escorted by his guard. Days have passed, and still the people of Anchiym form a human wall around the Vestal. It seems this Tiz person guarding her really is the boy we saved. Still, no sign of Edea. I've received word that the Vestal has been in contact with Prime Minister Dominus Harina. Fed up with the heat, I shed my armor and patrolled the palace in plain clothes. A voice called to me from the distance, and a shock raced up my spine. It was Edea. What are you seeing around here for, Ring-a-Bell? Ring-a-Bell? Who in blazes is Ring-a-Bell? She ran straight for me. You called, did ya? Came a reply from behind me. In a moment of panic, I hid in the crowd and fled the area. I emerged near the bazaar and was choking down a cup of the sugar water that passes for coffee here when the scout I put on the vessel's trail sent word. It seems she and her minions make for the echelons, moored in the inner sea. It's taken time to load the supplies furnished by the Prime Minister, but it seems that delay nears its end. I boarded the ship alone. None of them suspected a thing. I began with Tiz, striking him unconscious. The Vestal screamed. I demanded her name, confirming that she truly is the one from Caldislaw. I doubt she recognized me, given my armored state. Then she appeared from the neighboring cabin. I'd waited so long to see her. I reached out to Edea, assuring her that her capture at the hands of the Vestal was at an end. The words she spoke then were unthinkable. I'm not her captive, and she poses no threat. I'm here of my own free will. Was she joking? Temporarily insane? No matter how many times I beseeched her, she refused to heed reason. When words failed, she drew her sword on me. Edea threatened to resist if I harmed the Wind Vestal. Well, I had no fear of losing. She's too tough an opponent to subdue unharmed. I could not bring myself to harm the Grand Marshal's daughter. At a loss, I decided to content myself with hobbling the Vestal. I destroyed the skystone powering the echelons and made my escape. Unable to fly and trapped by the putrid oceans, the echelon is now a prisoner of the inner sea. Edea, a traitor? I must get word of this to the Grand Marshal immediately, and discreetly. Ignoring the storm of questions and emotions raging within me, I boarded the Dark Knight and set sail. Curse my traitorous tongue! What have I done? In one thoughtless moment, what have I wrought? I gave the council my report on the vessel's actions in Anchiym and the Wind Crystal's awakening. Were I not a fool, I'd have stopped there. Victoria's idle suspicions gave way to Victor's inevitable question, and I found myself unable to avoid mention of Edea. I ought to have delivered the news to the Grand Marshal in private, or at the very least not in the company of those two. They've ever held a grudge for Edea, and I've delivered them a perfect excuse to torment her. They even pressed the Grand Marshal for his word that all enemies of the duchy must be killed, and now they make for Florrum? They spoke of apprehending the Vestal, but I have my doubts as to their true intentions. I begged the Grand Marshal's permission to travel to Florrum myself. Perhaps I can enlist Anhiri's aid. It's a gamble I must take. Good. They haven't come by. I was worried I might run into them here. That would complicate matters. I could do little more than beg her help in the broadest of terms. Then it was back to my ship and away again. Though perhaps a bit out of date, the ship's almanac has this to say of Florrum. True to the old teachings, Florrum's women live in chaste humility in coexistence with the spirits of nature. And of the land's people, Devout Crystalists. They reject war and conflict, instead choosing lives of peaceful reflection. Sounds like a recipe for carnage if those two heard those words. Racked with anxiety since Victor and Victoria entered Florrum, I decided to reach out to them for periodic reports. The response I received showed Victor's cold concision. Stop meddling. Curse them both. On the other hand, the reports from Einherjar's people on the vessel's doing and the state of Florrum are piling up. The vessel was sighted within the city, then in the Temple of Water. Upon her return, she had parted once more. Witnesses report her party made for Mount Fragmentum in the east. Only tomorrow remains before this miserable year is over. I can only pray the next brings greater peace. I'll not hold my breath. After a month of anxious silence, they finally sent a wire. The wind vessel entered the Sacred Flower Festival. What? Einherjar was kind enough to elaborate in her report. She suspects the wind vessel's participation in a tawdry beauty pageant is an attempt to make contact with the vessel of water, currently in hiding. At least that makes some sense. Word came just before dawn that the Galleon Grand Healer had ignored traffic control directives and docked atop Central Command. The Grand Healer is Victor's personal airship. Victoria will be aboard as well, no doubt. The stunt they've pulled docking without permission shows the regard they have for the rule of Eternian law. Any efforts I made to question their intentions were ignored as Victoria marched past me to the central elevator, Victoria held in its arms. It seems he made straight for the white magic circulation hub on the ground level. I found the guard standing watch along the way, bleeding and unconscious. What madness is this? The white magic circulation hub stands at the east of the first floor of Central Command, lined floor to ceiling with odd machinery. It has always made me feel uncomfortable. I found Victoria floating in a chamber of fluids that resembled a great mechanical heart. Victor stood nearby, staring at monitors and muttering. The lecture can wait. He spoke without turning to face me. My report as well. Victoria. Try to bear it. He opened some valve, and the color of the fluid deepened. I took it upon myself to report Victor's return and Victoria's treatment to the Grand Marshal. I summoned Victor's lieutenant and got the details from him. Victor and Victoria remain ensconced in the white magic circulation hub. Meanwhile, Victor's man offered an account of what had transpired. I added his report to my collected findings on Florrum. An official account of the event had this to say. The Vessel of Wind appeared in Florrum's Sacred Flower Festival, wearing full Vestal regalia. Though traditionally famed for their piety, the people met her with cold dismissal, and the Vestal's pleas were drowned out by the jeering crowd. Years into the Blood Rose Legion's infiltration campaign, Prodigious funds and an aggressive citizen reprogramming effort have won them near complete control over Florrum. The news entity responsible for producing the above report is essentially a mouthpiece of the Legion. Meanwhile, a bulletin from the Orthodoxy struck a different tone. As false rites come to close, the babbling brook's voice reaches the wind. Though it blows west, it cannot sense the shadow close behind it. A coded plea for help from what meager resistance remains. But plainly, it states that the Sacred Flower Festival's end, the water vessel sent word to the Vessel of Wind. The latter left to meet her, but failed to notice the assassins on her trail. A second such notice followed soon after. The water rises to meet the demon child's light, shielding the air as it vanishes into vapor. Left alone, the winds howl in mourning and rage with purpose. Demon child. An apt description. It seems the water vessel was killed protecting her colleague from Victoria, and Victor's subordinate reported that it was in the battle that followed that Victoria succumbed to a fit, prompting Victor to spirit her back to the duchy. News continues to flood in from Florrum, hot on Victor's heels. The same Orthodoxy rag reports that the Vessel of Wind awakened the water crystal, celebrating the return of the world's oceans to purity. Reports from across the globe corroborate this claim. This marks 2 crystals awakened at the vessel's hands. Victoria is still out, and Victor is seeing to her around the clock. The council chamber feels barren with only 2 of the 6 in attendance. The air hangs heavy. We received word that the vessel has departed Florrum, but none of her destination. The purification of the world's oceans has snapped the tether binding her there. There are those who fret she's lost for good, but there are only 2 places she would go. The crystal of Earth is protected by the duchy's crags and the bulk of the Eternian forces. It's unlikely she'll head there first. That leaves Eisenberg and the Fire Crystal. I sent word to our men there to be vigilant, and received a response from Grandship. From the minutes of a sitting of the Grandship Council. The Vessel of Wind and Entourage arrived some days ago. The council debated for 5 days' time whether this was to be taken as an official visit or a simple act of tourism. She parted for the west before a conclusion was reached. It seems the agent of the Shieldbearers has also come requesting aid several times. but I doubt he'll find the infamous sleeping consul any more forthcoming than the Vestal did. Now we wait for the Vestal to be snared in the nets of the fleet we placed in the Sea of Corsairs. Eisenberg, the Vestal's next likely target and war-torn theater to Eternia's 1st Division. These last few days I've been reviewing the notes from my time there 4 years ago, before my appointment to the Council of Six. Eisenberg. Situated south of the Eternian continent, Eisenberg is composed of active volcanoes and sustained by the rich mineral deposits beneath its soil. Mining, refinery, and metal casting are its chief industries, and mithril steel one of its most precious exports. Mithril steel, an exceptionally hard metal refined from locally mined ore. Upwards of 80% of the world's mithril originates in Eisenberg's mines. In rare cases, the same veins have yielded orichalcum. Orichalcum, an extremely precious metal found exclusively in Eisenberg. Its durability is unrivaled, making it ideal for use in weapons and armor. Also notable is the extreme amount of energy released when the metal is melted under high pressure. Civil war has persisted in Eisenberg for 4 years, with the land divided between the Swordbearer and Shieldbearer factions. The Black Blades, 1st Division of the Eternian forces, assist the Swordbearers, making up for the latter's vastly inferior numbers and evening the balance of power in the region. One could say the evils troubling the duchy today have their roots in the outbreak of this war 4 years ago. As allies in anti-crystalism, the duchy had an understanding with the dissident faction known as the Swordbearers for some time. Their declaration of uprising came together with an urgent request for aid. It was far earlier than we had expected. We were unprepared. Yet Eisenberg was a stronghold of crystalism, second only to Florrum, and the Swordbearers represented the entirety of the nation's anti-crystalist movement. As the philosophy's chief proponents, the duchy could not deny their plea. The Shieldbearer forces outnumbered the Swordbearers 100 to 1. The war would end in one swift massacre. The Grand Marshal responded by deploying Swordmaster Kamiizumi's 1st Division under the guise of a mercenary band known as the Black Blades. The Blades' pre-drawn infiltration of Eisenberg's borders and the subsequent airship raid was successful. Starkfort was ours by the next morning. Not yet a council member, I was sent to inspect the fortress 2 weeks after its capture, and to compile a dossier on its status and layout. That was when I was first approached by the Swordbearer commander Eumeyer Astray. He came with effusive thanks for the duchy's support, and none too subtle demands that the report I sent to the Grand Marshal paint a glowing picture of the uprising. But the fact remains that the rebel leaders acted in haste, and their imprudence dragged Eternia into a struggle from which it stood to gain nothing. The commander, for his part, was overjoyed, drunk on the Swordbearer's first decisive victory. I could not conceal my mounting frustration at his oblivious presumption. Still no word on the vessel's whereabouts. In the absence of any clues to the way forward, I find my mind again wandering back to Eisenberg. At the war's start, the Swordbearers, well, the Black Blades, earned exceptional results. With a solid victory at their backs, they then wiped out the 100,000-strong eastern arm of the Shieldbearers within half a month's time. The good news ended there. It seems the Blades were struggling more than they let on. The turn to the Temple of Fire was forced by one of the subordinates' unauthorized use of lethal poison, covering the battlefield and making continued fighting impossible. Mount Karka's eruption, it later came to light, was due to another member's assassination of the Fire Vestal. By order of the Grand Marshal, the Vestal's death was to be kept top secret. Great care was taken to prevent the news spread. The Blades remain in Eisenberg today, holding the front while searching for a route into the temple to secure possession of the Fire Crystal. As the 1st Division of the Eternian forces, the Black Blades exist to spearhead the duchy's invasion force. In order to facilitate operations in other crystalist strongholds, the Grand Marshal repurposed his personal guard into a newly designated 4th Division, the Knights of the Eternian Sky. The unit's leader remained Knight Argent Henkel. Due to their hasty designation, they were left with an older airship and spent night and day in training for their pending deployment. In time, they would be sent to Caldislaw, only to be defeated at the Wind Vestal's hands. At the latest report, all routes to the Fire Temple remain barred by magma. This leaves us unable to secure the crystal within, but at least ought equally bar the vessel's entrance, should she indeed come to Eisenberg. The war continues to be at a deadlock, with both sides entrenched at either side of the Eisen Bridge. But the clearing of the sea has restored previously cut supply lines. With the risk of the vessel's intrusion, also comes a possibility to crush the Shieldbearers once and for all. An urgent wire came from the Black Blades in Eisenberg. Wind Vestal in Eisenberg. No more codes, no indirection. This is a public announcement, loud and clear. It seems the Swordmaster and Adia have already crossed Blades. Attached to the report was a message penned by Kamiizumi himself, confirming the danger he feels the vessel poses to Eternia, and forewarning of the possibility that he will be forced to kill Adia in dealing with this danger. An urgent report arrived today from Eisenberg. Somehow, the vessel has awakened the fire crystal. Swordmaster Kamizumi is missing, and morale among the remaining blades wanes by the day. As this intelligence left Central Command in an uproar, further reports arrived from agents placed in the Shield-Bearer camp. I will use this space to gather and sort through them. Wind Vessel allies with Shield-Bearer Commander Goodman offers to investigate Toxic Mist. Her party departs presumably for Grab Keep. Wind Vessel returns to Goodman with Mist Sample, proposing to cast it into magma. Goodman agrees. Vessel to raid Mithril Mines. Aid urgently requested. After capturing mines, Vessel takes captured orphan from Starkfort. She now makes for the Mithril Mines again. Purpose unknown. Vessel finds passage to Fire Temple at rear of Mithril Mines. Signs suggest Crystal of Fire has been awakened. Vessel departs Eisenberg. Destination unclear. 1 month has passed since reports of the Fire Crystal's awakening. All of Central Command has been busy with the fortification of the Earth Crystal's defenses and enhancing the 3 passages' security. Victoria is still in recovery. Testimony from soldiers returned from Eisenberg and reports from agents within the Shield Bearers are piling up. Among them, notice from a mechanic aboard the Swordmaster airship Yagyu. Fearing attack from the vessel, it reads, the commander of the Swordbearers stole the ship and fled. Kami Izumi must be in a state. Sure, he has a bad reputation, but he tended to our wounded and the enemies too. That's gotta count for something, right? Blackblade support member. It's our fault. We were tasked with banding together and protecting it, but we lost the concert. Bridge. Whatever. Swordbearer Guard / Paling Fan Club. After returning from the banquet, staff officers commence an army-wide spy purge. This will be my last report. Field Operative Eisenberg. There can be no doubt the vessel will come for the Earth Crystal. With no means of flight, however, the crags bar her entry into the duchy. Word of the vessel's activities has come in from Grandship and Caldislaw, albeit sporadically. Our agent in Caldislaw offered an especially puzzling update. We'll bring the orphan to the inn we set out from. It seems she traveled back and forth from Eisenberg to present a child to Caldislaw's king? Meanwhile, Grandship's sinking has accelerated, culminating in a mass exodus of the residents. Seems the sleeping council finally managed a swift decision, their own evacuation. Grandship sank overnight. Our operative there fled along with the residents, sending the shocking notice soon after. The report continues. The council fled, leaving the remaining citizens to panic. Amid the chaos, I saw the vessel and cohorts make for the council chamber. Shortly after, a terrible tremor shook the ship, and I was trampled unconscious by a flood of evacuees. I awoke in a lifeboat half a league from Grandship. A loud explosion followed, and Grandship began to submerge. A second blast followed soon after, then... The report suddenly ends there. The vessel's condition and whereabouts are still unknown. Upon reporting Grandship's disappearance to the Council of Six a few days ago, the Grand Marshal issued orders placing the entire Eternian force on high alert. Grandship has crossed the crags and entered Duchy airspace. To think a Leviathan barely able to float could fly, let alone cross mountains accessible only to Galleon-class airships. I have no doubt this is the vessel's doing. The vessel and company landed in Southmoor, reaching the Frost Peak Passage with disconcerting ease. Upon receiving word of the vessel's arrival on Eternia proper, the Grand Marshal ordered the white magic cable valve shut. Shutting off the supply of healing waves from Everlast Tower into Greater Eternia will prevent patients from receiving vital treatment. Among those affected will be the Grand Marshal's wife, Idia's mother. Military assets such as the Tundra Golems and captive dragons notwithstanding, the number of actual Eternian soldiers within the Duchy's borders is woefully small. We are unable to make contact with the division stationed elsewhere. Even ascertaining condition in the city is difficult under present circumstances. 3 passages connect Central Command to the rest of Eternia, west, center, and east. Being the shortest route, manpower, turrets, and other defenses have been concentrated within the central passage. It should be ironclad. The other 2 paths, sadly, less so. Evacuees from the city have brought news from outside. No one remains, military or civilian, and no combat between the vessel and our forces has taken place. The vessel and Idia entered the central healing tower, paid a visit to the Grand Marshal's wife, and now apparently make for Central Command. Word of the arrival at Eternian Central Command came in the form of cannon fire. Victoria deployed to meet them, with Victor in tow. They were, however, defeated and retreated to the White Magic Circulation Hub. There, they gave a noble last stand. He did it. He apprehended the Vestal. He had them asleep in an instant and ordered me to deliver Idia to her chambers and the others to the dungeons before he departed for the council chamber. I suspect he played some role in the Duchy's establishment, the same as the old man. Both hold seats in the Council of Six, though they have stood perennially empty. Did he come to Eternia's rescue in their time of need, or does he bear some other agenda? Eternia somehow escaped from her chambers. The guard posted at her door claims it did not open once and insists his vigil was without interruption. Now that I think of it, she performed a similar feat once when we were children. After escaping, Eternia freed the Vestal and her 2 companions as well. The old man played a hand as well, blasting open the door to the dungeons before departing to Command Central aboard that old airship. What drove him, a member of the Council of Six, to side with the Vestal? Lord De Rosso vanished as well, leaving only myself and the Grand Marshal to remain. Upon their escape, the Vestal fled to the city of Eternia, before returning to strike Command Central again shortly after. If she passes this point, the Earth Crystal is lost. I made up my mind to fight alongside the Grand Marshal, swearing to protect him and his ideals at any cost. My resolve was set. And yet... Leaving the Grand Marshal alone in the council chamber, I boarded the Dark Knight and set about completing my secret orders. My hands tremble with regret as I write this. The ship's course was set southwest of Eternia. 7 days of standing by above the southern sea since I departed Eternia. I spotted the pillar of light rising in the distance. The Grand Marshal has fallen, and Everlast Tower with him. The Earth Crystal is lost. News of the battle's result came much delayed. As I read of the vicious struggle between the Grand Marshal and the Vestal's forces, and its result, I felt as if my heart were being crushed. I have never known such despair. It seems the Grand Marshal lives, by Lord De Rosso's intervention, but he will never again swing a sword. Still, the knowledge that Eternia was not forced to slay her own father gives me some solace. As I awaited the vessel's arrival high above the sea, I saw the Swordmaster's Yagyu fly past below, nearly skimming the water. I responded to its swift approach with the demand for the captain's identity. The thick, grating voice that replied was answer enough. It was Meyer Estray, commander of the Swordbearers. The man who dragged the duchy into Eisenberg's civil war had turned tail and run as soon as his prospects grew faint. A contemptible sham of a leader. When I asked whether the Swordmaster or any Eternian personnel were aboard, I was answered with a hailstorm of bullets. I choked back my mounting rage, giving the order to my gunners to open fire. Minutes later, the remains of the Yagyu were sinking beneath waves, stained blood-red by the setting sun. How much longer until Eternia, until the Vestal arrives at the pillar? How many days have passed since I left his side? A pillar of light has stood above the southern sea for some time now, just as he predicted. That leaves little room to doubt his second prediction will hold true. Within the coming days, the Vestal and her friends will come here. I only pray I have the strength to stop them as I was asked to. Thinking back, the Vestal's followers have been with her from the start, ever since Caldislaw. Agnes Oblige, Vestal to the Wind Crystal. I never imagined the young girl I met on that pier would bear such a fate. And 'tis Oyer, for the boy I pulled from that canyon river to become a guard and ally to the Vestal on her journey. It seems on so many counts, I bear the fault for all of this. A long, harsh journey to erase the Great Chasm, a vessel who crossed the putrid sea and stagnant air to arrive, a boy whose home was swallowed. In retrospect, they seem a natural pair. Inevitable, even. And Eternia, I expect you too will join the Vestal here. You were ever a tomboy, capricious, pure, and stubborn, quick to tears. Perfect. I know not what it is you see in the Vestal, what spark resonated within you, but I swear this now, I will keep you safe, at any cost. The ship's siren has begun to sound, and the pod's taking her up, just as planned. The time has come then. This may be the last entry I am able to write. I am removing Eternia's picture from its frame, and placing it within these pages. I want her by my side.